Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to today's event for the release of All In Together. My name is Mark Friedman. I'm a former Generations United board member, a lifetime Generations United fan, and I think officially now a Generations United strategic advisor. And it's a huge honor to be here, even if it is about 6:30 a.m. West Coast time. And I'd like to also welcome a fellow Generations United board member, Jatrice Martel-Gator, who's here this morning. And just to say a few words of context before we hear about All In Together and the findings in the report. At the beginning of the last century, this country was one of the most age-integrated places on Earth. And in 100 years, we turned that completely on its head. And today, in many ways, we're one of the most age-segregated places on Earth. And a lot of that happened through the radical reorganization of institutions in American life, of schools, of the workplace, of places where older people live their lives. And it's no surprise in the wake of that radical restructuring of our daily lives so that older and younger have few opportunities to connect, that there's hand-wringing about loneliness, isolation, conflict between the generations, often overblown, but ageism and other kinds of challenges are born in the soil of this kind of radical age segregation. Which brings me to All In Together, which is a reminder that there's a movement afoot in the country today to make what's natural normal. If we rerouted the river of life so that the generations no longer had regular contact in a daily way, this is a movement to return it to its natural course. And so I'm so proud to be here for the release of the report. I can tell you, having read it carefully, that it's groundbreaking. It's based on 2 national surveys, but it's not just about the abstract. It includes powerful profiles of work that's happening at the grassroots level, which shows us what the future can be. And it also includes recommendations for how we can get to that future, a future that's wanting to happen. I want to also provide a shout out for Sharon Jason, the author of the report, and to say that after we hear about the findings, we have a treat, because Ina Jaffe, who has really opened the eyes of so many people across the country through her remarkable reporting at NPR on the aging of American society and the longevity revolution, is going to lead an all-star panel of some of the great innovators in this arena. I want to thank the Eisner Foundation, who is Generations United's close partner in this work. And I'll close by introducing the CEO of the Eisner Foundation, Trent Stamp, who's not only a thought leader in the area of bringing the generations together, but somebody who's lived it. He's probably the only person in America who's been both a Teach for America volunteer and a Social Security Administration employee. So with that, I'll welcome Mr. Intergenerational, Trent Stamp.
Thank you, Mark. That's a dubious honor at best, and it probably explains the plight of our Social Security Administration if I'm the only one who took that career path from Teach for America to the Social Security Administration. Thank you, Mark. This may not surprise you, but being a funder, we get a lot of cool perks out there in the world, and one of the perks was that I was given an advance copy of Mark's book, How to Live Forever, an audacious title at best, and I read it on the plane yesterday, and it is a beautiful, beautiful book coming out in November. I hope everybody will buy a copy, but I will certainly make it available to our grantees, as it will be a manual for anybody interested in intergenerational programming and seeking purpose in life. So thank you, Mark, and I think that's going to be a fabulous book. My role here is a quick one. I am essentially the father of the bride here at this event. My job is to pay for this and not to upstage the people that you really are here to see. So I will be quick. At the Eisner Foundation, we invest in intergenerational programs. We believe we're the only foundation in the United States exclusively investing in intergenerational programs, looking for solutions that benefit both older folks and younger kids together by bringing them together for positive impacts for their community. We do this not because we think that it creates gauzy pictures of old people with young children, but as the first Eisner Prize for Intergenerational Excellence winner used to hit me over the head with, Nancy Henkin, we find it to be not nice, but necessary. And I can think of no better opportunity for intergenerational programming than shared sites, where we literally, physically bring together two generations of people for their own benefit and for the betterment of each other as they serve as resources for themselves, for the other group, and for the community as a whole. So we're very proud to have had the opportunity to partner with Generations United, with Shannon Jarrett at Ohio State University, and to bring this report to you today. So it is my honor now to bring Donna Butts to the stage, Executive Director of Generations United. Thank you.
Well, good morning. We are thrilled that you're all here with us today as we get a chance to talk about this really important report that Sharon helped us really pull together, that Shannon's research really informed, that so many of you and the stories that you shared with us helped to weave. So thank you for being here. It's really a pleasure and an honor always to work with the Eisner Foundation. Trent and your crew are just fabulous. Because my job, I guess now I'm the bride, is to give a toast. So what I'd like to do is give a toast to some people that today and so much every day wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for them. So I'd like the Generations United staff and the Eisner Foundation staff to raise your hands. Let us thank you. Thank you. We appreciate you every day. I want to do a couple of shout outs before I jump into the report. Today we're really fortunate to have a couple of Eisner Prize winners with us. And I do think it's so important that the Eisner Foundation decided a few years ago they wanted to try to elevate and shine a light on the terrific work that's underway around the country. They're really helping to build the legitimacy of the intergenerational field, but also to elevate the high quality work that's underway. And so we have, in addition to Generations United, we have two of the Eisner Prize recipients here today. We have Mark Merity from Derote, and Dorinda Schubert from Meadows in Portland, Oregon. You'll see them over. So thank you. At Generations United, we're also very proud of the fact that they're both programs of distinction honorees as well. And that's the distinction that people around the country, researchers around the country, helped us to develop that really puts programs through a pretty rigorous criteria to determine if they're high quality or not. And both Derote and Meadows are recipients of our programs of distinction. And I bring that up to let you know that the nomination process is open now. So if you think you've got a great intergenerational program, be sure to apply for that. While there's a variety of intergenerational programs around the country, and we're really, really pleased with the ways in which people approach this important work to build bridges between generations, we really feel like there's one model that's poised to really, really go to a large scale and have a huge impact in communities, and that's intergenerational shared sites. Our report really bears that out, and which you've all got now, which is All In Together, Creating Places Where Young and Old Thrive. It includes the results of a couple of opinion polls, and I wanted to share just a few findings with you. Harris Interactive did the public opinion poll. Ohio State University and Shannon Jarrett's team were the ones that really tried to identify the programs around the country, and you'll be hearing about that. But what we found shouldn't surprise you. What we found is exactly what Mark was talking about people wanting the river to flow in the way that it has flown. And I describe it as we are not going back to something, we're going forward as we should be going forward. So what we found is that 4 in 5 Americans say that if they or a loved one needed care, they would prefer a care setting with multiple generations, not a single age group. They don't want to just lock people away. Nearly 9 in 10 Americans think that serving both younger and older in the same location is a good use of resources. It makes sense. 74% agreed that programs and facilities that separately served age groups prevent different generations from sharing the richness they each have. And when I think about gated communities, I know I get sometimes pushback on this, and I just say keep pushing, because I really don't believe it's healthy for us to segregate people by age. And I think about the role that elders have traditionally played in carriers of culture and making sure that stories, that history, that learning gets passed on. And we shouldn't just keep that behind a gate. And I think there's a great example in the report of a 92-year-old Eli Botkin, who we profiled in this report. And this is a picture of him doing what he does twice a week, which as a retired space engineer, he teaches math to 7th and 8th grade students. He spends time preparing for that. He's really very engaged. And we're delighted that Linda Boosgang is with us from Newbridge-on-Charles, the Hebrew Senior Life community where he lives. So Linda, say hi. There's Linda. Now, what's important is what he says is that it's such a delight to teach the children and the students, but it's also, he sparked such interest among young people who are now pursuing science and math as careers because they got excited because of him. So if he'd been locked behind a gate sharing his knowledge with a lot of other older adults, great. But the fact that he can inspire the next generation and do it because he's living in close proximity at the same place as those children go to school every day. So sharing space makes those connections flow much more easily, much more readily. They're really fabulous. So I think another element that Americans realize too is also what Mark mentioned, and that is you're hearing a lot about social isolation now, the detrimental effect. People thought maybe it was just older adults who were socially isolated. We know now that young people feel as socially isolated as older adults. And 92% of Americans said they believed that intergenerational activities could help reduce loneliness among all generations. They also have some pretty strong ideas about where those opportunities should be, where you could build bridges. They felt like senior centers and schools and universities were the absolute best places to begin, but that doesn't leave any community facility off the hook. So why haven't they flourished? Why haven't we have shared sites across the country? We haven't made it easy. We've set up all these conflicting multiple regulations, accrediting bodies, funding sources, and we've developed all these boutique programs instead of some ones that can really be replicated. So our report makes recommendations on how to make sure that in the local sites, it's statewide and nationally, we can make it easier to create shared sites. We want you to read the report. We want you to share it broadly. Think about what you can do where you are to encourage shared sites in every community in the country. Because together we can build those bridges that connect generations, that connect ages. It's the right thing to do. So thank you. It's my pleasure now to introduce our wonderful partner, Shannon Jarrett from Ohio State University, who's going to share with you some of the findings from the survey that she did. Shannon.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank the Eisner Foundation and Generations United for giving me the good fortune to come today and having done this work with my colleagues Holly DeBelco-Shoney, Kathy Lee, and Brianne Beaujolais. I'm very grateful to report on the 105 shared site programs who completed our national survey. Our most common combination was adult day services located with a child care or preschool. If we looked at elder care programs, combined residential programs, those would be the most common elder service matched with, again, child care or preschool. But we had a lot of different examples, and the idea of pairing just one elder and one child service is a misnomer because many are bringing multiple groups together. We had one respondent that listed 8 intergenerational partners, and I think at that point I'd run out of cells for recording information. A few of these unique programs include residential communities like Hope and a Future, and grandparent programs were represented as well. These programs, not surprisingly, indicated purposes of building positive intergenerational relationships and positive attitudes towards its participants, but most described additional goals, such as improving attitudes towards other groups, such as immigrants or LGBTQ individuals, utilizing community members' talents, reducing caregiver stress, improving financial stability, optimizing use of space, and even improving workplace climate. One respondent described, "It brightens your day when you realize that you can make this joy happen." These intergenerational respondents, we had intergenerational coordinators. These are people who train staff and schedule and oversee programming. We could find those at about 1 in 4 of our different respondents that reported. But still, the majority rely on 1 or more staff and lack a dedicated coordinator. These staff offer programming at about 1/3 of the sites almost every single day that they're open, or more than once a day. So this is what Donna was talking about, that value of having them in the same building. At the same time, there are still some programs who don't have this transportation problem and are still only getting together seasonally. So our work is still not done yet. While some reported that intergenerational programming doesn't generate any additional costs, about 1/3 said that it did. And they said that they shared those expenses between the youth and elder programs. And 1/3 of those respondents total said that they rely on grant funding to support their programming. Some responded that the intergenerational programming has opened up and increased the number of funding streams that are available to them. The top challenges that our respondents reported point directly to efforts that GU and their partners can engage in. Now I'm going to look at the slide to make sure. Cool, I'm on the right spot. These include demonstrating impact of intergenerational programming, including studying funding models, demonstrating impact on health and education outcomes, and studying the financial benefit of achieving these outcomes. We should be using or developing standardized measures that practitioners can use. We need to communicate, to disseminate the research findings that people like me do to places beyond the typical research outlets, and to create advertising materials that sites can use to promote their organization's efforts. They don't often have budgets for this kind of work. And to connect, to optimize social media, to connect groups, to launch intergenerational subcommittees at state levels, such as associations for the education of young children or departments of aging. Those used to exist in some states, and in some cities and states you can still find them. And we need to support the efforts that Generations United and the Eisner Foundation continue to pursue. There's much good work going on at these programs, and more remains to be done to support the interests of those Gallup poll respondents. Eisner and Generations United are doing their part, and I'm committed to doing the same. Thank you.
Shannon, thank you. It's been absolutely fabulous to get to work with you on this survey and do some site visits around the country and really get an idea of what's happening in communities and get inspired by that. What we didn't mention is it's been over 20 years since the last survey of intergenerational shared sites was done in the country. So this really helps us get that baseline because we know that we need to build, we're going to create more, and we're really looking forward to digging more and more into the research that Shannon and her team have done and sharing that with all of you as well. So now it's my pleasure to transition because we've told you a little bit about the report, about the surveys. So let's see some faces and hear some stories. We're delighted that Ina Jaffe, NPR correspondent, is with us today to moderate the panel. Ina's done a fabulous job of elevating important aging issues to a national audience, and we are delighted that she was able to join us today. So I'm going to invite Ina to come up, as well as our panelists are going to take their seats, and Ina will be introducing our panel after she makes a few remarks. So if our panelists will come up, and Ina will come up. Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning. Thanks all for being here today. As you heard, I cover aging for NPR. I really am going to try and move this microphone a little bit. Not too much. And because I work for NPR, I'm obsessed with getting the microphone just right, to the extent that I can. So I've been covering, yeah, see, no, it's fine. I've been covering aging for NPR for almost 6 years. And before that, I covered politics. And there's one big difference, definitely, in the switch between the two beats. I get lied to a lot less now. So when I first told my baby boomer friends that I was going to be covering aging instead of politics, their reactions were really, I think, telling for the issues that we're discussing today. They kind of fell into three categories. So one group of friends said, "Oh, you're going to be writing about my parents." Because as we all know, baby boomers will never get old. And then there was another group of people who said, "Oh, you're going to be writing about me." And I thought, okay, a little narcissistic, but you know, at least you're in touch with your own aging. And then there was the group of friends who looked at me with really serious concern and went, "Aging? Won't that be depressing?" And I thought, well, I guess it would be if you thought of aging as nothing but loss and disability, but I don't think of it that way. I'm sure none of the people in this room think of it that way, and my friends needn't have worried about me, because this really has been one of the most rewarding things I've ever done in my career. So these reactions meant, for at least 2/3 of these people, that aging just wasn't something they had given any thought to, maybe even avoided thinking about, outside of maybe their parents or their grandparents. And I think that's because the way we organize our lives, as Mark was saying earlier, we don't give ourselves opportunities anymore for different generations to meet each other. So there are exceptions. And a few years ago, I was privileged to do a story on a place called Hope Meadows. And Hope Meadows is in Rantoul, Illinois. It's on the site of the former Chanute Air Force Base. And it was intended to be a place where families adopting children out of foster care could get support. And they wanted to take over a few houses from the, officer housing that they had there. The military wasn't giving away a few houses. The military wanted them to take over 80 units. And what are we going to do with all this? And so they thought, well, maybe some older adults would like to move in here. They'll have affordable rent in exchange for volunteering for a few hours a week. It was an afterthought. But it was quickly apparent that the presence of older adults were the glue that held the whole thing together. And the fact that these older people can be backup for the parents and can be mentors and surrogate grandparents for the kids is what's made Hope Meadows a success. That was 25 years ago. And since then, it's provided a model for similar communities around the country. You're going to hear about one in a few minutes, Bridge Meadows in the Portland area. They're now developing their third community. But there are also other communities where older adults are close neighbors with young mothers aging out of the foster care system, with adults with developmental disabilities, and with military veterans who have traumatic brain injuries. So the report we're discussing today, as Donna has mentioned, notes some challenges in creating these opportunities for generations to mingle. And it's been my observation over the years that I've been reporting this beat that one of the obstacles, whether stated or not stated, for programs that benefit older adults is ageism, pure and simple. The idea that you have nothing to contribute when you're older, that if you're not in the workforce, you're not worthy, and that older people are a drain on resources. So, on the other hand, we know from a number of studies that ageism isn't just sad or unfair, it kills. people who hold ageist beliefs live up to 7.5 years less than people who don't. Holding ageist beliefs also makes it harder to bounce back from a health setback. It even increases the risk of dementia. And in the circles that I travel in these days, there's a lot of talk about how to combat ageism. And what's different about this particular ism is that it's not prejudice against the other. It's not prejudice against a group that's not our own. My favorite definition of ageism is that it's prejudice against our future selves. So one way to combat ageism may be to create more places where young and old can mingle, where they can learn from each other, where we can learn to see ourselves in each other across the generations, and realize that old age isn't something to be ignored or feared. It's something we all aspire to. And fortunately, we have 3 people with us today who can talk about the benefits of participating in these kinds of programs. I'm going to introduce them now, starting from the far end. That is Dr. Dorinda Schubert. She's the executive director of Bridge Meadows in Portland, Oregon, which I just told you about a bit. In the middle is Marilyn Haskell. She's a musician and a resident at Collington Kendall in Maryland. And also with us is Enrique Stevenson. He's a student in the Geriatric Career Development Program at the New Jewish Home in New York. So welcome to our panelists. And I'm going to take this microphone there and join them. And if you see me looking at my watch from time to time, I'm not bored. It's just my job to make sure that this event ends on time. So I'll be keeping track of time. I'm the clock keeper. So Dorinda, since we began with you and since I mentioned your program in my remarks, I wonder if you could just begin by telling us a little bit about Bridge Meadows, how it started and how many people it serves?
Sure. So Bridge Meadows, as Ina said, is in Portland, Oregon, and it was begun because we were inspired by the Hope Meadows community. Some really caring people in the city of Portland read the Hope Meadows book. There's a book written about Hope Meadows. It's you can buy it on Amazon. It's a lovely book, and they said, well, we have to have this here in Portland, Oregon. And so that was in 2004, and eventually in 2011 we began to welcome people home. And we currently have 2 sites, so one in Portland and one in Beaverton, Oregon. Its biggest claim to fame is the headquarters for Nike. And all total, we have 120 people living in Bridge Meadows communities, and it's children who are coming from the foster care system to live with their forever families, and usually it's grandfamilies. And then, as Ina called them, I call them the secret sauce, our elders, who are 55 and older, and they come from all over the nation to be a part of Bridge Meadows community because they want to live with meaning and purpose, and they want to give back, and they want to be connected to something bigger than themselves.
That is one of the things that I found so remarkable when I was covering Hope Meadows, was that people move from around the country to do this. We hear of people moving when they're in retirement, going to Florida or something. But I mean, I met a woman who had worked in the school system in El Paso, who moved to the middle of Illinois just for this.
We have people come from Manhattan to live in Portland, Oregon, rainy Portland, Oregon, Central Florida, California, Colorado. They're from all over the country.
And so, Marilyn, I wonder if you could tell us about the program where you've had an opportunity to interact with young musicians who have come to live at the community that you live in now. I wonder if you could just tell us about where you live and about what this program is.
I live at Collington Kendall, which is in, I guess you'd call it rural Maryland, but it's not very far from the DC border. So we have a community of about 500 people, and 100 of them are in assisted living and skilled nursing and dementia care. The other 400 live in independent living and in ages from mid-60s to 103, I think. And there are apartments and cottages and villas and so forth. And last year we began a program with the University of Maryland where we are providing room and board for 2 graduate music students from the university to live on campus and interact with us, to be teachers, to give us classes in music appreciation and various other topics, to provide concerts, to bring their colleagues and rehearse, because rehearsal space is limited at the university, which is about 15 minutes away. So in that time, we have learned, well, I think the thing we learned the most is that these are dynamic young people. One was a master's student who has just now finished her degree. The other one is a doctoral candidate. The doctoral candidate was a clarinetist, and the master's student was a cellist. I'm the director of the Collington Singers, which has been around for most of the 30 years that Collington has been in existence. Of course, there's a turnover. But in any case, I have about 60 singers. And so I decided to write a piece, because I'm a composer, write a piece, or to actually, I arranged it, the Eric Satie piece, Gymnopédie No. 3, for voices and cello and clarinet. So we were able to do that. I think the most dynamic story that I would like to share with you is that Samantha, who is the cellist, was invited by one of our residents to come to her house and play in a kind of soiree. She invited her neighbors in, and Samantha came and played. And that developed into a really nice friendship. This woman, whose name was Clarita, was friends with a neighbor by the name of Ken. And she let Samantha know that Ken loved Bach. And so the night before Ken's birthday, there was a knock on the door. Samantha said, "I've come to play Bach for you." Not long after that, Ken discovered that he was dying of brain cancer and knew his time was limited. He was in hospice care, and Clarita talked to Ken, and Ken said, "For my funeral, I want to have the cello play Bach." And Clarita said, "Well, you're not going to be there. You're not going to be able to hear it, so I think you should hear it now." And so that's what happened. And Samantha came back and played the Bach unaccompanied cello sonata by Bach. And then she also played that at Ken's funeral. That kind of interaction between the generations, where Samantha could reach out to this person who was probably older than her grandfather and be able to develop a relationship, was very touching for the community. And the community is very close-knit, as you might imagine. So that those kinds of things happen. That's just one story of what happened, and there are many.
And I understand that Samantha had some challenges, and the residents helped her with them, specifically transportation.
Yes, Samantha was having to take Uber to come from the university over to Collington, which is probably about a 15, 20-minute drive, but there's no other transportation, and so she was having to pay for Uber to do that, and the residents found out and said, "We can work out a carpool," and so that's what they did.
So Enrique, this program that you are in,
Geriatric Career Development Program.
Geriatric Career Development Program, it's fascinating to me. I've never heard of anything quite like this, where you're not only focusing your studies in a certain area for much of the time, but you're also getting practical life experience and work experience. And I wonder if you could tell us about that.
Yes, we call it GCD for short, but it's basically getting us prepared for the future, because we're teenagers learning how to be responsible, and they get us prepared for that. And it's important because when I meet the residents, it's like they're teaching you how to basically follow their footsteps, because you never know who you meet there's this one lady I've met, her name is Myra Hernandez. She was an RN at the same nursing home she's in, the New Jewish home. Yes. And she goes, what do you want to be when you grow up? I said, I want to be a doctor. She was like, okay, well, here's what you need to do. Follow behind me. Don't go nowhere else. I'm like, all right. So she was my mentor. Basically, she was my mentor. So every time I was in the New Jewish home, I would go see her no matter what. And she would sit there and she was paralyzed on one side of her body. She has a wheelchair and she sits there. She goes, look at that man right there. He's a nurse. I'm like, okay, what is he coming to do? He's coming to take my blood because she had diabetes. He took her blood. He came and he was like, Myra, you know what I'm here for? She goes, yeah, I know what you're here for. He goes, what am I here for? You're here to take my blood. What you gonna do with it? He goes, I'm gonna give it to the nurse, the other nurse. She goes, okay, here you go. She was like, how you do think I was gonna take? Because I used to work here. She was like, oh wow, what a coincidence. So I'm like, you see, this is what you need to learn. You gotta know how they maneuver. I'm like, wow. Then we had a lot in common because her birthday was 3 days after mine, August 12th. I'm the 9th, and it's like she was another grandmother to me because she taught me a lot, and I was just heartbroken when she got discharged because she wasn't there for that long, and
Have you been able to see her since then?
Yes, I kept in contact with her. I gave her my phone number. She actually lives not too far from the nursing home, actually. And
How did you get interested in doing this? I mean, I don't know. I think not every young person automatically says, yes, I want to work in geriatrics. Some do. And it has been my observation when I have met gerontology students that every single one of them tells me about a really close relationship they had with a grandparent or another older person, neighbor, something in their life. But anyway, I digress. I want to hear about your experiences and why this appeals to you.
okay, so I live in the Bronx, and the high school that I go to is called Mary Curie. It's a medical school because we wear scrubs. It's basically in health professions, and the way we found out about GCD is like an advertisement where they come and they give us pamphlets and show us what they have and stuff. So when my guidance counselor asked me what I wanted to do in my future, I told her I want to be an orthopedist. She goes, okay, so here's this, read this. So I'm looking through it. I'm like, this has nothing to do with what I want to do in the future. She goes, Enrique, sit there and read it. So I'm reading it, and I see that they have CNA certifications, PCT, college readiness.
That's certified nursing assistant and pharmacy tech?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, so if I be a CNA, will I be able to work up from it? Because I didn't know enough. So she was like, okay, you're gonna apply, then you're gonna go to the interview. I went to the interview and I asked them. They said, you can work your way up. This, at your age, is a huge opportunity because not most kids get this. So for me, it was very important. And at that time, I was like, should I do this? Should I not? She was like, you're gonna do this, and you're gonna tell me about it after. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do it.
And was there a aha moment where you
Yes.
said, oh yeah, this was a good idea?
It was a good idea because they have a lot to offer. And one important thing to me is that they teach you how to be responsible at a young age. I'm 17 years old.
What's the most challenging, scary thing you've had to do on the job there?
For me, transporting, because at that time I didn't know how to operate a wheelchair. So it's like, I'm trying to go right, I'm going left. I'm trying to go left, I'm going right. I'm like, I'm so sorry. She goes, it's okay.
Did that wall hurt?
She goes, my foot is fine. Just make sure you pass your driver's test. I'm like, all right, no problem. But I feel like it'll get me ready for the real world when I'm ready.
That's great. So, Durenda, you work with families who have adopted children who were formerly in the foster care system. You don't get into the foster care system if everything has gone smoothly and happily in your life. And I wonder if you could talk about some of the special relationships that have developed between some of the young people and some of your older residents, developing that comfort zone with each other.
Oh, sure. And as Marilyn said, every day there's just hundreds of stories that we could tell. And I was joking earlier that we also could be a reality show, and forget the gala, let's just do a reality show. So one of the beautiful things that happens at Bridge Meadows is the connections between the children and the elders. And we use the word elders on purpose. It is what elders expected and wanted to be called. We asked their opinion. And for the most part, I'm an obedient young lady who was raised well by her grandmother, so we listen. And so we have also placed our buildings so that there is close proximity between the family homes and the elder homes. And what I didn't say before is our elders range in age from 55 to 93 years old. And every elder contributes in some way to our community. And it's with their gifts and talents and what brings them joy. And often what elders will say to me is, "You made it so I'm not wearing my pajamas anymore, Dorinda." And so I'm like, "No, you did that. We just did this." And so we have two little ones, Benny and Jill, and I'm changing their names, so if I mess up, you just go along with me. So two adorable children who are 8 and 9 years old who really experienced some quite trauma in their life. As Ina said, it's very difficult to become a foster child. Something really horrific has happened to you. And they were adopted by their great aunt who took them on. Well, great aunt has a job, a full-time job, and so she needs help with childcare and also a myriad of other things. And right next door to her live 3 elders. And those elders are an incredibly important part of those children's lives. And what's interesting is they don't always see eye to eye, but they know, and Marilyn's laughing, and I know you're all shocked. They don't, but yet, because of the needs of these 2 children, they put that aside and they cooperate and collaborate together quite well. And recently, Auntie had a medical emergency, and she had to be whisked. It was non-life-threatening, but it was still, she had to go to the hospital. And another mom took her, but before that happened, those 3 elders swooped right in, and they made sure that the little ones were well cared for, and that Mom, Auntie, didn't have to worry about anything. And so somebody was there, putting him to bed, getting him bathed, getting him to bed, getting him to school, and picking him up from school. And another elder was going to the hospital to just take good care of Mom. And the mom said to me, "You know, Dorinda, I got in that car and I didn't worry, because I knew that those 2 little ones were going to be wrapped in love and they were going to be fine. And I could just take care of me, which was what they needed as well." And one of the little ones has been on film saying, "Oh, they all love me. This whole community loves me."
You know, I think that's a sense of community that we all envy, that people don't necessarily find in their regular lives.
Exactly. And you know, what's really fun is I often give tours of Bridge Meadows, and sometimes the kids toddle along with me. And I'll have to explain, you know, the words foster. I'll use the word foster child for foster children. And one time after one of those tours, these 2 little ones said to me, "Dorinda, who were you talking about when you said foster children? Who are they?" And as a child psychologist who's worked with that population forever, that just brought tears to my eyes.
So, Marilyn, when you moved to Collington Kendall, was the fact that there weren't young people living there, was that at all a cause of any concern for you?
It wasn't, and it's not that we only have this program with the university students. We have a dining room, and the waiters are, most of them are students at the 2 local community colleges. And you might think that, well, waiters and people they're waiting on don't have much interaction, but what I found there is that students sort of get adopted by we prefer using the word perennial, by the perennials, and so they follow them in their careers. They know when they're going to graduate. They know what their career plans are, and so forth. And of course, you know, with many senior organizations and so forth, there are people who go out and tutor in the local schools, and we have groups that do that. So I wasn't too concerned about it being isolated at all. One of the things that happened almost within days of my moving in, excuse me, a woman 2 doors away from me said, "Oh, I want to try a new recipe. Would you come over to dinner?" She was 93 years old, and she had a group to a dinner party. And I moved from New York City, and I rarely cook. And so that was a real delight for me. And it was a most stimulating conversation with her carrying on and leading everybody in interesting. So I really had no concerns.
And you know, you brought up something interesting too, which is that we talk about older adults, these strange amorphous terms that we use that there really is no good language for talking about aging, and that's something that I've been reporting on too, and that everybody has to think of perennials. It makes it sound like you bloom once a year. I don't know.
Unless you're in California.
But what I was going to say is that the example that you just brought up about going to your neighbors for dinner, people say older adults, and that's anybody over 60. Well, people 60 and people 90 are not really the same generation either. And so you can have multi-generational living, even in, you know, a community that is for older adults. I wonder if you could say a few words about how the program with the music school got started.
The university has a program that they were just beginning. I believe it's called Outreach, and I think that's the title of it. Anyway, they were looking for opportunities to be able to do something like this, and fortunately, one of our residents had heard about the program, and also another one that is happening at Johns Hopkins, which is close to us. And so she went to our CEO and said, "Could we sort of look into this?" And he made contact with the university, and we were selected to be able to do it. So the university screens students and do the first round of interviews, and then residents do the second round and select the 2 people who will come. The 2 people who were there this year will be leaving, and we have selected 2 more new ones. So I don't know how long this is going on. The thing that's wonderful is that I kind of hope it keeps going, but I'd also like other places to have the opportunity to experience this. The students get, Samantha had a cottage, and Matt, I haven't said much about Matt, who was the clarinetist, he had an apartment. And so he was living in very close proximity with people on either side of him and was teaching clarinet lessons to one of our jazz clarinetists. So it was fun.
So, Enrique, I want to come back to you. You were saying do you have your certification to be a certified nursing assistant?
Not yet.
Not yet. You're working
in the summer, I'm taking CNA classes because I'm a junior transitioning into a senior.
Oh, okay.
So we start classes, and then after I take those classes, we take a test, and the test shows whether or not I'm certified.
Because I've run into plenty of people in their 20s, 30s, and beyond who were taking classes to be CNA. They weren't going to be CNAs when they were 17 years old. So that's pretty awesome.
That's why I say, like, most people don't have opportunities like this, and whenever they get it, they should take it because it's going to benefit you in the future.
So you have 1 more year in this program.
Yes, I do.
What big projects do you have to look forward to as part of this?
I look forward into like meeting more residents because I see that I get attached too quick, and it's not healthy. But the intergenerational activities is what keeps the program going because we do a lot because they learn from us, like we learn from them, and they see how we can basically follow what they want us to do.
And so you say you got attached too quickly?
Yes.
Too quickly? I don't know, maybe just quick enough. What do you think?
Me and Myra became best friends the same week I met her.
And so you want to meet more older people who are residents there. Do you have any other close friends there amongst the elders?
Yes, because most of my peers, they're from my school, elder from other schools, but the thing I like about the program is that we meet different other kids that have the same interests in the medical field. So it's like when we all come together, it's like, I never met you before, but you want to do the same thing I'm doing. That's cool. They don't have to be at my school.
Dorinda, you were talking about, well, earlier you told me about, I'm going to forget the name of the event. It's a weekly dinner where people cook for each other. And that is something you would think of being an activity that is mainly performed by the older residents, but it's had benefits for some of the kids too?
Yeah, so every, at Bridge Meadows, we have events that the staff produce, or activities and amenities the staff produce. Then there are events that the staff and elders or residents produce, like intergenerational art class. And then there are activities that just the residents put on. So if any of you want to learn how to knit, we can make that happen for you at Bridge Meadows by some of our elders. But one of the things that happens on a regular basis that is a collaborative effort is Happiness Hour. And every Wednesday at 4:30, if any of you are in the Portland metro region, please come on by for dinner. And it's a pretty wonderful way for the community, all three generations, to come together, share a meal, and build those intergenerational bonds. And so we've been doing this since the beginning, and it's evolved, and now it's a full-blown meal. It used to be cookies and milk, and now it's a three-course dinner. And in Portland, one of our mothers said, I really want to give back to this community because you have all given us so much. I have my granddaughters with me now, and they're thriving, and they're doing so well. So I used to be a caterer. So Miss Reba creates this incredible meal every Wednesday in Portland. So then when we opened Beaverton, the elders there had seen this happen, and they said, well, we want to do that. And what they've done now is not only have a little group of elders who put dinner together, but they've incorporated some of the children, especially one child. And Nikki has just been recently removed from a pretty horrific situation and is with his grandparents forever. And they're in that process. And his trauma really manifests itself not to make friends very easily. Right now, he's in a lot of pain, and so he tends to push people away. And he's pretty saddened by that. And so he started kind of milling around when the elders were putting the Happiness Hour food together, and they noticed that he keeps milling around. And so he actually started using that time to talk about how hard things had been for him, and how he didn't understand why sometimes people rebuffed him and didn't really include him in things. And so they're able to make this connection with him. And so he now shows up on the dot the minute those ladies show up. And so they've given him little jobs, and he now puts out the silverware and the things he can do, and the napkins and things like that. But more importantly, he has now connection to elders who care about him. His parents have the support of these three women who can be there to be a backup plan for them, and where prior to this, they were feeling quite overwhelmed until they started to build these relationships. So who knows, maybe he'll be donning a chef's hat soon, I hope so. But what's important is he's being accepted in the midst of his healing.
I've been thinking about what you've been talking about, Enrique, as we've been sitting here. And you've known that you wanted to be a doctor, specifically an orthopedist, from a pretty early age.
Yes. Well, I actually had to pick between a pediatrician and an orthopedist, but I chose orthopedist because when orthopedist is it's not simple, but you're not dealing with too much blood from the heart or the brain. That's too much. I'm sitting there, imagine me being in the OR, what am I doing? But the leg is down here, I just find it much better. I like the bones, so I'll stick to the bones. And I wanted to be a doctor when I was around 5 because I love going to the doctor for an appointment or a checkup and just sitting on the bed, and he checks my blood pressure and he's putting the, what do you call that? The stethoscope at my chest. I'm what can you hear? What are you listening to? He said, I'm listening to your heart. It's making music. So I'm like, what kind of music? Can I hear it? He puts it in my ears. I heard, doom, doom, doom. I'm like, what's that song called? Like stuff like that. And I just fell in love with becoming a doctor ever since. I still do to this day.
I guess I wondered if your interaction with the residents at the new Jewish home has maybe given you a deeper understanding or changed your ideas about who your patients are going to be when you're finished with medical school.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm not going to see you guys anymore. So
I don't mean that they would just be different individuals, but I mean what a patient is, you know?
patient, to me, a patient is like, they're not always coming for help. They're not always coming for help. They're people who just, they want to know, like, what's going on, because some might become ill and they don't know what they have, or they want to know more than what you know sometimes. So I feel like patients are not always patients. They're people. We're all people. We're all going to get there someday. We're all going to want to know more than what we know now.
Well, I think this is the end of our panel. And these were really inspiring stories, and I want to thank all of these people for sharing them with us. I think about now, half the people in this room are thinking about moving to Bridge Meadows. And it wouldn't be necessary if there were more of these shared sites of different kinds in every community, in the communities we all live in now, and places where different generations could share their experiences. So I want to thank you all for coming today. I want to thank Generations United for inviting me, and thanks to the Eisner Foundation for making this event possible. And thanks once again to our panel.